That's good. Okay.
There we go.
I had a million files in my trash. All right. Okay.
All
Record.
right.
Okay. My guest today is Elizabeth Cush. Thank you for coming and talking to me today, Elizabeth. I really appreciate you.
Oh, that's so nice to be here, Rosemary, and it's so nice to meet you face to face. I know we've emailed back and forth. Yeah.
Yes, finally getting started. And before we move on, can you tell us who is Elizabeth?
Well, I am a mom, I am a wife, I am a daughter, but I'm also a podcaster, a mental health therapist, and a life coach, and
Oh,
a business owner.
and a business owner. So you're a typical mom.
I
A
am. I
ton
am
of
a typical
hats.
mom. That
Yes.
is true. Many
Yes.
hats, many, and I'm a dog owner. So yeah, lots of hats. And I take care of lots of people. Although my
Yes.
sons are now grown, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you telling us that.
Hmm.
Today we're recognizing World Mental Health Day.
That's
And
right.
yes, so I wanted to actually touch on that because it's such mental health is such a challenge for solo moms and
Hmm.
probably everybody at this point in time. So tell me something that we can do today to actually focus more on our mental health.
Hmm. Well, I think it's important to normalize that. Yes, everybody. There are moments probably when everyone has struggled with mental health stuff, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't just the quote unquote crazy people. Everyday average people struggle with mental health. And I think knowing that you're not alone, that there are people out there that can help if needed, whether it's a therapist or a life coach, there are people that can help, and that you don't have to go through this by yourself if you are struggling.
Right. Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And sorry to
Yeah.
throw that out at you, but I just wanted
No,
to
that's
get like
okay.
a
Yeah.
quick and dirty. Okay.
Yeah.
So now that you've told us who you are, can you tell us what you do?
Yeah. So, in my therapy practice, progression counseling, I work with anxious adults. So, men and women who struggle with anxiety and stress, I help them through a better understanding of what happened in their past is impacting them today. Because oftentimes the patterns that we fall into in our past because of how we were raised or experiences we've had impacts our stress and anxiety today. And so I help them kind of better understand the connections and then work through bringing more calming, peaceful, compassionate strategies in their day-to-day life.
So
Um,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
That's
sorry,
okay.
go ahead.
I was going to say in my life coaching business, it's similar, dealing less with sort of trauma and past issues, but helping overstressed, overwhelmed women find more balance and ease in their lives.
Okay. Excuse me. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So in both your endeavor, I suspect that you focus on how our past affect our present.
Hmm. I do.
Can you tell us some of the ways that manifest, like
Hmm.
in what ways?
Yeah. Well, it can impact us in a lot of ways. One in particular is especially if we have experienced trauma in the past, whether it's a what they call the big T trauma or small T trauma, when we've had experiences that sort of disrupt our emotional regulation as a child, oftentimes because of our parenting, how we were parented, we may not have been taught how to manage those big feelings. And so I know for myself, I speak from experience that oftentimes we just push the feelings away and we don't deal with them. And then in adulthood, when things start shifting and changing, or suddenly we want to do things differently, the emotions may come up then. So it may present as anxiety or depression, or just an knowing that some of your needs weren't met when you were a kid. And so now having to figure out how to do that in adulthood. Um, Other ways is oftentimes we are told stories about who we are, like, oh, you were too much as a kid, or you were the one who was so needy, or you were just so loud all the time. And we internalize those stories so that we come to believe them about ourselves, when really this is someone else's story about us. And these are things that I can help, and other therapists or coaches can help us to release them when they don't belong to us anymore.
Right,
Does that
right.
make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Also, I wanted to talk about patterns. Like, you know,
Mhm.
when when we don't deal with trauma, I
Yeah.
think we develop these patterns and we wonder, why do I keep doing that?
Mm.
Can you address that?
Yeah, sure. And know that that can be true for someone who's not a trauma survivor too, right? We
Mm-hmm.
learn how to cope as a kid. We learn how to manage, whether it's feelings or experiences or people in our lives. We learn how to do that at an early age, and yet we're not often given the tools to shift those patterns as we age, as we get older.
Mm-hmm.
And they can become very ingrained. I mean, they talk about nowadays, like the neuroplasticity of our brains. Like our brains can change, but we just have to do the work to help it change and shift those patterns. So I'll give you an example that, say, Sunday nights are really difficult for you. So you worry and stress about work the next day. Then it keeps you up at night. You don't sleep well. You start your day on Monday feeling tired and exhausted. And yet you're doing the same thing every Sunday. You're like, I'm going to be better this time. But then the worry gets a hold of you and you keep worrying,
Mm-hmm.
instead of maybe shifting a pattern of, how am I going to take care of myself on Sunday? What can I put into place that will help me manage the stress better going into Monday? Maybe it means I go to bed earlier. Maybe it means I have a rest day on Sundays, instead of making Sunday like what we call today Sunday fun day, and I drink all day or whatever. Yeah, we do things. We shift the patterns so that that becomes the norm, and that can also shift the feelings.
Hmm. Okay. You kind of touch on what I was going to want you to talk about next, and it's self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care is something that gets thrown around a lot, and we sometimes hear it so much that we become numb to it. But
Mhm.
explain the importance to someone who is dealing with trauma or is dealing with the results of trauma, based on what you're talking about, the pattern, the
Yeah.
wrong patterns or the negative patterns. how
Yeah.
how does self-care help with that?
So what I found that is often the case with trauma is when it's unresolved. Um, we've learned to sort of shut off the feelings. We've learned to compartmentalize them because they were too painful to process. Would maybe we weren't given the skills to process them. Um, and so we fall into these patterns of sort of putting the feelings aside, which I think is part of self-care, is acknowledging our feelings and really being able to be with them.
Mhm.
But also, I think as women, we are programmed, whatever, culturally, it's put on us to really take care of everybody else, to give all of us to others. Like that's the unselfish thing to do. That's who we are as caregivers. And so our needs, that self-care and it doesn't have to be like getting your nails done. It can just be like, am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Do I need to rest? That's self-care. But those things get put to the bottom of the list or left off the list altogether. So often I find that women are doing. It gets to the end of the day and they're exhausted. And now there's no time or energy to put into place self-care. Like, so you just go to bed exhausted and wake up exhausted the next day
Mm-hmm.
versus taking those moments throughout your day to check in and say, well, what do I need in this moment? Do I need to lay down for 10 minutes or get a big glass of water or eat a snack or
Yeah.
just rest? Yeah.
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 Yeah. So to me,
Yeah.
self-care is those little moments throughout the day.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I think sometimes we get caught up in, you know, the label that, we're lazy if we just take a rest.
Yes.
Or, so it makes us feel bad and guilty that, we're lazy.
Mhm.
We're not busy. We're lazy.
Yeah.
So,
Lazy, selfish if we're putting our needs before other people. Yeah. There's
mm-hmm,
a lot of negative stigma for women around taking care of themselves, even
mm-hmm.
though we're drummed with self-care, self-care, self-care.
Yeah, and then when we don't take care of ourselves and it affects us mentally, then we're called crazy, right?
Right, right. Or two, we beat ourselves up like, why aren't I taking better care of myself? Like, why do I keep saying I'm not going to, drive myself into the ground and then I do it anyway? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Okay.
but yes, we can go crazy from it for sure.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, yeah. So I wanted to delve more into self-care and women taking care of themselves, moms taking care of themselves, um, given it's World Mental Health Day. But
Mm.
also I wanted to, talk more about your work, since we're gonna go to tomorrow. And tell us how you help people specifically, not in general, and how
Yeah.
we could get in touch with you. Sorry.
Yeah. Um, so specifically, well, oftentimes it does depend on the individual because everybody is unique in their story. But for women, especially for moms, helping them recognize when these old patterns are what drives them to just push, 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 not take care of themselves. Like, do I consider myself lazy or have I heard that story in the past about being lazy? And so then how do I try to help them release that story because it's not theirs anymore. So what do
Mm-hmm.
they, what does it mean to them? And it really does get at the feeling behind if I am considering myself lazy, what does that mean about me? Right? I'm not going to get done what I need to do. I'm going to let go of my responsibilities. I might not take care of my kids. When the reality is, your body just needs permission from you to rest and giving yourself sort of making sure you're keeping the promises you make to yourself. Like, tomorrow, I'm going to do better. Well, make that a priority. If that's important to you, how can you find the space in your day? And it's all about making it manageable too, because
Mm-hmm.
we do lead busy lives. That's the reality. I mean, I talked to somebody the other day and they're like, I keep meaning to meditate, but I'm busy driving my kids around. And by the end of the day, I'm so tired. I fall asleep if I meditate. I was like, maybe that's what you need to do is
Yeah.
fall asleep, right? Maybe that's what your body is telling you. So I think oftentimes for women, it is finding the resistance behind what it means to take care of yourself or resting or mm, putting your needs first sometimes, saying no
Yes.
to things that like volunteering or extra activities or even to your kids. Like, I can't do that right now. Mom needs to rest or mom needs
Yes.
to sit down for a minute.
Yes, and stop being so hard on ourselves, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And recognizing too that that self critic, that inner critic can really make us feel so bad about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, imagining if your best friend came up to you and said, I'm so tired, but I just have to keep going. Would you say, yeah, you're lazy if you want to rest? You'd be like, you know what? You should take care of yourself and
Yeah,
rest. So, why is it okay to treat ourselves with the harshness that we do? Yeah.
right, right.
Yeah.
All right. What is Elizabeth grateful for today?
Mm. I am grateful that right now, today, it is a beautiful sunny day and I have a week ahead of busy work, but I also have built into it some self care. So I am grateful for that too.
Okay, cool. All right. So we talk about moms and um self-care. Let's go on to still moms, but are women in midlife. What are some of the struggles that we face? The kids are
Mhm.
gone, we're alone, or, with our
Mhm.
hobby. What are
Yeah.
some of those struggles?
Well, I think for some women, the struggle is when all the energy has been sort of put into raising children, taking care of the home and work, that when kids launch, when you're no longer, if you have an empty nest or as you're approaching retirement, the idea of like, okay, well, what about now? What do I do? What's going to fill my life now? As well as um, I've been so good at taking care of everybody else. I don't even know what I want to do now. Or maybe I'm not happy with what I'm doing now, but I'm just now realizing that I have the space in my life to recognize that I've been pushing myself so hard and I don't want to anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult place to be. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
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 So,
It is.
okay.
Well, and knowing that it's one that's a natural progression for us to sort of reevaluate our lives at this time because we may have been so busy with all the other to-do list stuff that we sort of stopped to forget we stopped we forgot to stop and ask ourselves what really matters to us.
Yeah, and that's the part where going back, if you're dealing with someone still raising their children, that's why
Mhm.
self-awareness is so important. That
Yeah.
you know who you are as an individual and plan
Mhm.
and figure out what you want, so that when the kids are doing their own thing, you got your own thing too. So yeah,
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely. I didn't even go back to school for my master's until I was 50
Mm-hmm.
because my kids were getting older and I was like, all right, I need to do more with my life. I was really called to um, help other women get through some of this hard stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, went back and
Okay.
been doing that now. Yeah, for a little over 15 years.
Oh, okay. So tell us how we can get in touch with you, all your contacts.
So many. So I have a therapy business. I'm licensed in Maryland and Delaware for individual therapy with clients. And my therapy website is progressioncounseling.com. And then for life coaching, and I can work with women all over the country, all over the world, that's elizabethcushcoaching.com. And right
Okay.
now, if you sign up for my newsletter for elizabethcushcoaching.com, you get a free journal to help you reduce stress and bring more balance and ease into your life.
Okay, cool. And we put those in the show notes for
Excellent.
listeners. Yes. Give me one piece of advice for a solo mom.
Hmm. I would say listen to yourself. That yeah, that as you said, to really reflect and be in touch with you, who you are as a person and what matters to you. I mean, that reflects how you parent, that reflects what you do in your life, but it can also give you some guidance because we are so wise. We really do know what we need. We just don't always listen.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth Cush, for coming and speaking to me today. I really appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you having me on, Rosemary. Thank you.
Okay.